The rain fell in heavy sheets, drenching the earth with a vengeance. Thunder cracked across the sky like cannon fire, rattling the old stone shutters of Renmere Hall. Inside, Sir Alaric Rowan stood by the fireplace, staring into the flames, as if they might offer some answer to a question he no longer asked. He had not left the estate in months. The war had ended. His duty fulfilled. His wife buried beneath the rose tree in the garden she once tended with gentle hands. Now he lived in silence until the knock dot. No, not a knock. A frantic, pounding fist. Alaric turned sharply, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of the sword that still hung by the hearth. He crossed the hall and unlatched the door, the wind nearly tearing it from its hinges. There, in the downpour, stood a woman, soaked to the bone, barefoot. Her hair clung to her face in wet strands, and blood stained the hem of her dress. Her eyes met his, wide, dark, and terrified. "Please," she whispered, swaying. "They're chasing me." And then she collapsed by the time she stirred. She was wrapped in a blanket near the fire. Her feet had been cleaned and bandaged, a cut on her arm dressed with care. Alaric sat across the room, silent, watching her from beneath the shadow of his brow. She blinked, disoriented. Then her hand darted to her side, searching for something. "There is no weapon here," he said calmly. "And if I meant you harm, you'd already know it." She exhaled sharply, then sat upright, clutching the blanket tighter. Where am I?" "Renmere Hall." "Who are you?" "I could ask the same," he replied. She hesitated. "My name is Elena." "Just Elena?" She didn't answer. Alaric stood. "You need food and rest." "I need to leave," she said quickly. "They'll find me if I stay too long." "Then you'll leave after your strength returns." "Not before." He turned away. "You're safe here. For now." That night, Elena barely touched the stew he'd left her. Instead, she sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Her fingers trembled as she held the wooden spoon, and now and then her eyes flicked to the windows, listening for sounds only. She seemed to hear. Alaric watched her from the shadows of the hall, unseeing. She was young, but not fragile. There was a stiffness in her spine, a controlled tension in every movement, like someone who'd spent a lifetime hiding behind manners. And something about her. It wasn't just fear, that it was grief. He recognized it like a mirror. Days passed. Elena remained quiet, never revealing more than necessary. She helped in the kitchen, despite his protest. She stitched torn curtains in the parlor. She walked the perimeter of the garden when she thought no one was looking. And each night, Alaric would hear her cry, softly, barely, audible through the stone walls. He never spoke of it, but he never slept through it either. On the 6th morning, she finally asked, "Why did you help me?" Alaric paused, looking up from the saddle he'd been repairing. "Because I've seen too many women left to die on the road." "That's not an answer." He met her gaze. "Isn't it?" She held his eyes, then looked away. "You don't know who I am." "No," he said, "but I know what fear looks like, and what pain does to a person." Something in her broke. Then, just a little. "My name isn't just Elena," she whispered. "But for now, please let it be." Alaric nodded once. "Then Elena it is." But as night fell, far beyond the hills, a hunting horn blew in the darkness, and soldiers rode hard toward Renmere Hall. They would arrive before dawn. The morning came gray and thick with mist. Renmere Hall, once a place of silence and dust, had taken on the hum of quiet movement. Elena swept the stone corridor leading to the east wing, her steps light, but her mind heavy. Alaric watched her from the library doorway. She moved with a grace too refined for a peasant. Her posture, her diction, even the way she handled the teacup, they all betrayed a background she refused to admit. She was not who she claimed to be, and he knew it. Later that day, he found her in the stables, rushing down one of the mares with practiced ease. "You've handled horses before," he said, leaning against the doorway. She didn't look up. "I grew up around them." "Where?" There was a pause. "Far from here." He approached, slow. "You ride better than most of my men ever did. You stitched that curtain in the O. Parlor with gold thread, meant for noble tunics. You speak like a court lady. Who are you really, Elena?" She stiffened, turning to face him. Her eyes flared with panic, then cooled. "Does it matter?" she asked softly. "I'm here now. You saved me." He studied her. "If I'm to protect you, I need to know what danger follows." She flinched. "Then maybe you shouldn't protect me." He stepped closer. Too late for that. That night, as the wind howled through the trees and the fire cracked low, a knock sounded at the side door. Alaric opened it, sword in hand. It was Callum, his loyal steward, soaked from the ride. He handed Alaric a folded parchment sealed with dark wax. "I found it near the old watchtower, hidden under a rock. A carrier must have dropped it. There were hoof prints." Alaric unsealed the letter and read in silence. His jaw tensed. The letter was addressed to King Ryden of Valoria. "The girl has fled. We believe she's heading north through the woods. She was last seen wearing a violet cloak. Orders remain. Alive, if possible. The wedding must proceed." Alaric turned to the fire and tossed the letter into the flames. He didn't speak of it to Elena. Not yet. The next morning, she entered the great hall with a tray of bread and broth. She moved slowly, cautiously, as if waiting for something to break. He was already seated, studying an old map of the region. "I saw you riding yesterday," she said gently. "You favor your right leg." "I shattered it during the siege of Elfwyn," he replied without looking up. "Does it still hurt? Every time it rains?" She approached the table, setting down the tray. "You don't ask about the letter. I figured you'd speak when you were ready." She sat opposite him. "I was to be queen." The words hung between them like a blade. She continued. "My father was a duke. He died in the revolt. The new King Ryden offered peace by proposing marriage. My hand in exchange for the safety of our lands. And you refused." She nodded. "I escaped 2 nights before the ceremony. I had help, but not all survived. Why come this far north?" I'd heard rumors that a knight once loyal to the crown had disappeared into the hills. A man with no allegiance to tyrants. She met his eyes. "I came looking for you." Alaric sat back, stunned. "You risked your life to find me?" She smiled faintly. "Not you. Just someone who wouldn't sell me back to the highest bidder." Silence stretched between them. Then he stood and walked to the window. "There's a price on your head." "I know. There will be more than just scouts soon. They'll send soldiers. I know that too." He turned slowly. "Then we need a plan." But even as they spoke, banners were being raised at the royal outpost. Horses were saddled, and orders were shouted across the barracks. The king would not be. Humiliated. And Renmere Hall was now marked on every map. The fire burned low in the hearth as twilight slipped into darkness, wrapping Renmere Hall in stillness. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees like an omen. Elena stood near the window, staring into the night. Her violet cloak, now washed and drying by the fire, lay draped over a chair, the only visible link to her past. The rest of her had begun to soften. She no longer flinched at every noise, no longer avoided Alaric's eyes. But that night, something in her shifted again. Alaric entered with 2 cups of warm cider and handed her one without a word. They drank in silence. "I thought you might turn me in," she said after a long pause, still facing the window. "I thought about it," he replied honestly. Before I knew who you were. She turned slightly, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. And now? He took a slow sip. Now I understand why you ran. Elena looked away, the firelight catching the tear that slid silently down her cheek. He killed my uncle, threatened my cousins, said I could stop it all if I wore the crown beside him. Her voice broke. But I would have become his prisoner, a puppet in silk. Alaric set his cup down. You don't have to justify yourself to me. But I do, she said, spinning to face him. You gave me shelter, protected me. You've risked your name, your life. And I'll do it again, he said, his voice low, steady, as many times as needed. Her eyes searched his, looking for deceit, for duty, for pity. She found none. Only fire. Later that night, the storm broke over the hills. Rain pelted the roof like war drums, but inside, the world was quiet. Elena entered Alaric's chamber without. Knocking. She stood in the doorway, soaked from her walk through the garden, her dress clinging to her form, her hair damp with mist. I couldn't sleep, she said simply. Neither could he. He rose and crossed the room, stopped just inches from her. For a moment, neither moved. Then, without a word, she reached up and touched his face, tracing the scar along his jawline. He leaned into her hand, eyes closed, like a man tasting sunlight after years of darkness. When he opened them again, she was already kissing him. It was not desperation. It was not gratitude. It was something deeper. Wounded hearts seeking shelter. Two survivors clinging to the only warmth they'd felt in years. Their hands trembled as they explored one another. Not with urgency, but reverence. And as the storm raged outside, Alaric and Elena made love for the first time. Slow, silent, sacred. Before dawn, she lay curled beside him, his arm draped over her waist. Her breathing evened out, but he did not sleep. He stared at the ceiling, listening. There, the distant beat of hooves. Faint, but certain. He slipped from the bed without waking her and walked to the window. 4 riders. No torches, moving fast, toward them. His hand gripped the window frame. As a single thought struck his chest like a hammer, they had found her. Back in the room, Elena stirred. Alaric? She whispered. He turned to her. They're here. She sat up, instantly alert. How many? 4, maybe more behind. She stood, pulling on her cloak. We can escape through the stables. No, he said. If we run, we're hunted like dogs. If we stay, we buy time. For what? He picked up his sword, still sheathed. For the truth to catch up to the crown. The sky was still dark when Alaric descended the stairs, sword strapped to his side, boots silent. Against the old stone, the house was still too still. Only the wind outside hinted at the storm that was about to break. In the kitchen, he found Callum already awake, pale and tense, a musket propped near the door. They rode through the lower field, Callum whispered. Didn't try to hide their tracks. How many? At least 6. Maybe more waiting in the trees. Alaric nodded once. Wake the stable boy. Tell him to take the back path to Black Hollow. If we don't return by nightfall, he burns the ledger and seals the gates. Callum hesitated. Are we at war again, my lord? Alaric's jaw clenched. Feels like we never stopped. Elena met him by the hearth, fully dressed, eyes sharp despite the fear behind them. She held the dagger he'd given her the night before, but her hands did not tremble. Don't ask me to hide, she said. Wasn't going to. She stepped closer. What happens when they see me? They'll call you a fugitive. Say I've kidnapped you. And will you deny it? He looked her in the eyes. No, but I won't surrender either. Before she could answer, the front door shook violently. A voice boomed from outside. By the authority of His Majesty King Raiden, open the gate. We come for the traitor and the stolen bride. Alaric drew his sword. Elena touched his arm. Don't fight them. I won't let them take you? If they kill you, I have nothing left, she whispered. Let me speak. The guards were led inside under cautious terms. Elena stood in the great hall beside Alaric, her posture straight, her chin high, a woman ready to defend her name, even if it cost her life. The commander entered, clad in black leather and red insignia, a scar down one cheek and cold eyes that swept the room with disdain. Lady Elena of Thornhaven, he announced. You are ordered to return to the capital. Your absence has placed the kingdom in crisis. Alaric stepped forward. She came here of her own will. No crime has been committed. The commander smirked. Then why hide her? She was running. From a forced union, Alaric snapped. Not from justice. The guard ignored him. You, Sir Alaric Rowan, are charged with treason. The punishment is death, unless you surrender peacefully. Elena stepped between them. He did not kidnap me. I sought refuge. You'll have to take me by force. The hall tensed. Hands moved to hilts. The commander raised one gloved hand. We don't need blood today. But mark me, Lady Elena, if you do not return, the king will burn every village in Thornhaven until your ashes are found. Elena froze. Alaric felt her breath falter. Give us time to prepare, he said quickly. Let us ride together. She deserves that dignity at least. The commander studied him and nodded once. You have until dusk. He turned and left without another word, the guards following like wolves. The silence after their departure was deafening. Elena sank into a chair, her hands shaking now. They'll kill you, she whispered. They'll try. I can't let you die because of me. You're not the reason, Alaric said, kneeling in front of her. They are. This king, this crown. It was always going to end like this. She looked at him, eyes wide. Then let's run. He shook his head. They'll chase us forever. But if we stand and speak the truth, we may have a chance. A chance for what? For justice. Outside, the sun began to rise through the mist inside. Alaric and Elena made ready, not for escape, but for defiance. The sun had barely crossed the treetops when the sound of galloping hooves returned. But this time, there were no negotiations. The guards stormed Renmere Hall like they'd been waiting for a reason. Alaric was dragged from the stables, unarmed and unarmored, thrown into the mud as the commander's voice rang out. Sir Alaric, Rowan, by royal decree, you are under arrest for treason and the harboring of a fugitive of the crown. Elena screamed as they seized him. No, you said until dusk. The commander turned to her, smug. Orders changed. You're to be delivered before sundown. The king doesn't wait for brides who run. She lunged toward Alaric, but was held back. His eyes met hers, not pleading, not afraid, calm. I'll be all right, he said softly, but she knew that was a lie. They chained him and loaded him onto a cart. No chance for a proper goodbye. No time for explanations. Renmere Hall stood behind them like a wounded beast, its gates closing on the man who once commanded its silence. Elena sat in a separate wagon, guarded closely, her wrists bound by ribbon rather than rope. A royal gesture meant to remind her of her place, but her heart pounded with fire. Not fear. She would not be quiet. Not this time. The capital loomed tall and cold by nightfall. The procession entered through the southern gates under heavy watch, citizens peeking through shutters as whispers filled the streets. Elena of Thornhaven. Isn't she the one the king wants to wed? And that's the knight who disappeared. Look what they did to him. Alaric was thrown into the castle dungeon, his hands raw from shackles, his face bruised from the ride. The cell was damp and reeked of mold, lit only by a torch flickering in the corridor. But he didn't cry out, didn't curse. He sat in silence, the weight of his choices settling in his bones. He'd done this before. Captivity, punishment, survival. But never with this kind of ache. This time, someone else would suffer if he broke, and that someone was Elena above him. Elena stood in the royal chamber, dressed in a gown of sapphire blue, the very color of her house. It fit her like a cage. Heavy, formal, regal. The king had sent no greeting, only orders. She was to appear at court at dawn. Married within the week. Unless... She turned to the mirror and touched her cheek, remembering Alaric's hand there just nights ago. She couldn't let this happen. She would not save her house by sacrificing the man who had saved her soul. Later that night, the Queen Mother entered her chamber unannounced. An older woman with sharp features and silver hair woven into braids of steel. "You look like your mother did before the wedding," the Queen said calmly. Elena bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, I was not always the king's mother." The Queen continued. "Once I was a pawn, like you." Elena said nothing. The Queen stepped closer. "I've read the letters you carried, the ones hidden in the hem of your cloak." Elena's heart stopped. How did you weren't the only woman to sew secrets into her seams? Elena stiffened. "Then you know the truth." The Queen nodded slowly. "And I know what it will cost." Elena met her eyes. "Help me, please." The Queen Mother paused, then spoke so softly it was almost a whisper. "There will be a trial. Make it your stage." Beneath the castle, Alaric lay awake in the dark, chained and still. He closed his eyes, and in the silence heard her voice again. "You don't know who I am." Now he did, and she was worth every chain. The great hall of Valoria's royal palace had not been this full in years. Courtiers, noblemen, advisors, even foreign emissaries, lined the marble aisles with eager eyes and hungry curiosity. A scandal was about to unfold. At the center of it all stood Sir Alaric Rowan, bruised but unbroken, shackled at the wrists. His armor had been stripped. He wore only a plain tunic. He refused the offer of a seat. On the dais, King Ryden sat in a throne, carved from black oak, his golden cloak cascading over the steps. Beside him, Helena stood, dressed not in the wedding blue she'd worn the night before, but in white unadorned, defiant. The hall hushed as the king rose. "Sir Alaric Rowan, you stand accused of high treason, of harboring a fugitive bride, and of assaulting royal authority. Do you deny these charges?" Alaric looked up. His voice was steady. "I deny nothing. I protected a woman who came to me seeking safety, not power." Murmurs rippled through the room. Elena stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. Like a blade, "Your Majesty, if this trial is truly for justice, then I must speak as well. For I am not a fugitive. I am a witness." Ryden's jaw tightened. "You will speak only when—" "I will speak now," she said louder. "Because you did not seek a queen. You sought possession. And when I fled, you sent your hounds not for justice, but for punishment." The Queen Mother watched silently from the gallery, her face unreadable. Elena continued. "I have here letters from your advisors, signed and sealed, detailing threats to my family, bribes to our household, and your intention to marry me solely to seize Thornhaven's lands. I brought these for your court to read aloud." A hush fell across the room. Gasps, shuffling feet. A ripple of fear among the council. The king's face turned red. "You lie." Elena lifted a parchment. "Then let your scribes verify the seals." She handed the letter to the scribe, who unrolled it and squinted. After a moment, he stammered. It bears the royal seal, sire, and the Duke of Eastmere's." The king stood abruptly. You were promised to me by your house. You fled like a coward." "I fled like a woman refusing to be silenced," she replied, her voice trembling now. "And I found shelter with a man who never asked me to be anything but free." She turned to Alaric. "He is no traitor. He is my salvation." The room erupted, some in applause, others in outrage. The king raised a fist, but the queen mother stood. Her voice, though quiet, silenced all. "This trial is no longer about treason. It is about power." She walked forward, eyes locked on her son. "You forget, Raiden. Kings are not made by crowns. They are remembered by justice." The king glared at her. "You would side with her? I would side with truth." The trial was dismissed by the queen's command. Guards hesitated, unsure whom to obey. In the confusion, Alaric was unchained. Elena rushed to his side, wrapping her arms around him before anyone could stop her. He whispered, "You didn't have to." "Yes," she said, breathless. "Yes, I did." That night, word spread across the capital. The wedding was called off, the night was free, and the kingdom would be forced to reckon with its own corruption. But for Elena and Alaric, the fight was far from over, because justice once spoken aloud could never be taken back, and the king would not forget. Renmere Hall was silent again. Its halls echoed only with the wind and the lonely footsteps of a boy sweeping ash from the hearth. Alaric had returned to his land, but the home he'd once known no longer felt like sanctuary. Court had freed him, but the king had not forgiven him, and vengeance wears a crown far longer than justice wears a robe. Alaric stood by the cliff behind the hall, staring down at the mist-covered valley. Elena approached quietly, her cloak wrapped tight around her shoulders. "They burned our fields," she said, voice flat. "Callum saw it from the ridge. He didn't respond. They're punishing your people," she added. "Because of me." He turned slowly. "Because of us, I stood beside you. I spoke the truth. That makes me their enemy now too." "But your people didn't ask for war," she whispered. "They didn't choose me." He reached for her hand, gently. "Then we show them this wasn't just a scandal. It was the beginning of something greater." 2 days later, they rode to Thornhaven, her homeland, now teetering under the weight of fear and famine. The people there barely recognized the woman they once called Lady Elena, but she didn't need their reverence. She needed their ears. She stood atop the old stone fountain in the village square and spoke. "You've heard lies about me, that I betrayed the king, that I ran from duty, but I ran to protect you. My marriage was a trade, my freedom for your silence. I chose not to accept it." People watched her warily, but some eyes softened, some shoulders straightened. Alaric stood beside her, his hand on the sword still marked with royal blood. "And I stand with her, not as a knight of the court, but as a defender of every voice that has been silenced by fear." That was the first day they were called the Exiles, a title whispered by rebels, feared by lords. The next week, messengers arrived under cover of night. A seamstress from Eastmere, a farmer from the north, a teacher from the river towns, all carrying the same message. "We believe you." What began as 2 became 20, then 100, then more. But hope draws fire, and King Raiden was not done. One night, as thunder rolled across the horizon, a messenger arrived at Renmere, bloodied and half-conscious. He carried a letter, sealed in black wax. Elena opened it. With trembling fingers. It read only, "You will kneel, or I will destroy everything you have rebuilt." Attached was a torn piece of blue cloth, from the same dress she wore at court. Alaric crushed the seal in his fist. "He's baiting us." "Then we don't take the bait," she replied. "We strike first." In the candlelight of the hall, maps were drawn, routes discussed, allies named. No longer fugitives. No longer victims. They were building something. Not an army. A rebellion of dignity. Dawn broke over Thornhaven with a fire-streaked sky. The old bells of the northern watchtower rang 3 times, not for celebration, but warning. The king's army had come. They weren't many, just 2 regiments. Enough to remind the land who wore the crown. Enough to burn another village as a lesson. Olenna stood atop the ramparts of Thornhaven Keep, hair braided, armor beneath her cloak. She hadn't worn a crown, but today she looked like a queen born. From Defiance, Alaric stood beside her, sword strapped across his back, his face grim. "We can't win in battle," he murmured. "We're not here to win by force," she said. "We're here to reveal him." As the king's men lined the hills, a single white banner was raised by Elena's side. Not a surrender, a summons. Villagers, merchants, scholars, and even children flooded the square behind the keep, carrying written testimonies, letters, copies of decrees, long buried by the royal council. Stories of land stolen, families silenced, brothers conscripted. A crowd of 2,000 stood, ready not to fight to witness the commander approached the gates on horseback. He raised his voice. "Lady Elena, Sir Alaric, you stand against his Majesty. This is your last chance to kneel." Elena stepped forward. "I will kneel," she said, "if the king himself stands before these people and denies the truth they carry." She held up one of the letters, the same one from her chamber, detailing bribes and threats. The crowd lifted their own pages. Paper fluttered in the wind. Like doves. The commander's jaw tensed. "We were ordered to burn Thornhaven." Alaric's voice rang out. "Then do it before witnesses. Let history remember the day a king feared the words of his people more than their swords." Silence. The commander turned his horse and rode away. That night, the army did not attack. They vanished. Into the trees, shamed and leaderless. Word spread like wildfire. Towns to the east refused to send taxes. Lords in the west sent messengers of peace. And in the capital, whispers turned into questions. King Ryden locked his doors, and the queen, mother, called for a council. Alaric sat beside Elena by the fire. For the first time in weeks, no guards watched them. No scouts waited by the door. Just peace. She leaned into him, her voice soft. "What happens now?" "We wait," he said. "And if the king falls, then we build something better." She smiled. No crowns, no chains, just choice. In the shadows of rebellion, they had found something deeper than revenge. They had found a beginning. Years passed. The story of Sir Alaric Rowan and Lady Elena of Thornhaven became legend. First whispered in villages, then sung in taverns, and finally inscribed in the scrolls of scholars who dared to write history not from thrones, but from truth. The king who once ruled through fear was never dethroned by sword or siege, but he was abandoned, his court emptied, his council dissolved. One by one, his allies vanished, not through war, but through silence. They no longer believed in him. In the south, Renmere Hall was rebuilt, not as a fortress, but as a place of learning and law. There, Elena taught young women to write their own names into history. No longer bartered, no longer hidden behind veils. Alaric trained boys and girls alike in the art of defense, not just of body, but of soul. He taught them that strength begins when you stand for something greater than yourself. They never married in any church, nor wore crowns of gold. But in every village they passed through, people bowed not to status, but to sacrifice. Many say they vanished in their old age, leaving behind no heirs, only letters, journals, and a chest full of parchments sealed in wax. Inside those parchments, the truth. The same truth that once threatened a kingdom and saved its soul. And now, dear listener, I ask you this. In your own life, Are there truths you have hidden to survive? Names you've buried to protect someone you love? Or wounds you've carried that still bleed in silence? Perhaps you, like Elena, are more powerful than you are told. Or perhaps, like Alaric, your honor was forged in fire long before anyone saw it. Don't wait for permission to speak. Don't wait for crowns or applause. History is written by those who dare to remember out loud. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. What would you have done if you were Elena or Alaric? Which part of this journey touched you most? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of Forbidden's love, lost honor, and second chances. Until next time, may your truth always find its voice.